extremely grateful to be here. And so when Jim talks about pastor appreciation, I feel like you guys do more for me than I do for you. And so it's a very humbling moment when something like that happens, because we were gone on our vacation and we missed coming here, and so I feel like you guys have done so much more for me. We're so grateful to be here and to be a part of this family, and that's an extremely important thing for me and my family. And so I appreciate the appreciation, but I can't even express how much I appreciate all of you. So, thank you for that. So many of you know we were on vacation last week. We went to Ireland. It was absolutely amazing. We're so fortunate to be able to go, and I could stand up here and I would love to just show you pictures of all the pictures that Megan took. I took 6 pictures. Megan took more. I'd love to stand up here and show you all the pictures and share all the stories. If you do Facebook, you've probably seen a lot of them already. We have lots and lots of stories, and if you're interested, we'll tell you some, but I want to share just a couple things that I learned about Ireland real quick. First thing I learned, they never fill up your water. When you go to a restaurant and you sit and they ask what you want to drink and you say water, I think they're so disappointed in you that they just give you like this cup like this of water, and then they never come back. And they never come back. I was dehydrated the whole trip. I like to drink water. I like to drink a lot of it, and they just never. I kept on saying, "Am I supposed to go to the bathroom and fill this up?" I don't know. and they never came back. They also have ridiculously small appliances, like small. Our washer just broke at home, and we had to buy a new one right before we left. And I think I measured, we could fit 7 European washers into our new washing machine. It was unbelievably small. The refrigerators are small too, very small. Dishwashers, they were small. Yeah, another thing, driving on the left-hand side of the road is stupid. Yeah, and they all drive like maniacs, absolutely maniacs. The roads are small. The roads are narrow, like crazy narrow, like this big. And I actually did a lot of praying on this trip, because the roads, there are so many turns that you have no idea if someone's coming. And if someone's coming, you are going to hit. So every corner, I just prayed. I just prayed that no one would be coming. And it only happened once. And you just have to put it in reverse and back up until there's like a sheep gate. And then you pull into that, and then they go. It was unbelievable. Another thing, I understand that spray painting, and some of you, you could answer this. Mallory has sheep, right? Or Grace has sheep, right? Goats. Chickens? Both. Okay, cows. Well, this is what they do. I understand spray painting sheep is a way for the farmers to distinguish like whose sheep is whose. But I would appreciate it in the future if they would wait to spray paint their sheep until after the Johnstons finish their visit. Because spray painted sheep don't look as good in pictures as unspray painted sheep. But that's what they do. They just spray paint their sheep. Your son doing that?
They do it on pigs too.
Oh, they do it on pigs too. Okay. Well, apparently, next time I would like them to wait until we were done, because the pictures would look a lot better. But the biggest takeaway from our trip was that every day we'd see a site and we would say, "This is it." That was awesome. too. They have the best Aldi's there. It is great. Megan must have put that one. Yeah, Aldi's was great too. That was a great sight too. But when we were there, every day we would see something, and we would say to ourselves, "This is it. You know, this is the most amazing thing that we have ever seen." And then we see something else, and then we say, "Well, I guess this is now the most amazing thing that we've ever seen." And the wonder and the beauty was truly overwhelming. And it just kept coming. And during the week I'm always planning my sermon. And I'm trying to think of a topic or an idea. And sometimes I have to search hard, and sometimes it just comes. And I was telling Megan that I should have my next sermon have something to do with the trip. But I wasn't sure yet. And Megan's idea was something about how they have almost as many Catholic churches in Ireland as they have Baptist churches in the Midwest. But on one of the last days we were there, we went to the southernmost tip of Ireland, and it was called the Mizen Peninsula. And there were these enormous cliffs, and with raging waters, and the waters crashed into the rocks, and the spray would shoot up at least like 40 or 50 feet. And if you went west from this point, you would run into North America, and if you went south at this point, you would run into Africa. And the views were completely breathtaking. And the words and pictures just don't do it justice. And I was standing there, just like looking out on all of it, and Megan walked up behind me and said, "Here's your sermon." And she was right. As I stood there, I felt completely small and completely insignificant. But I also, at the same time, felt empowered and important. I felt like I could do anything. I felt so many contradicting emotions at that moment. But most of all, I felt the wonder, and I know it's an overused word, but I felt the pure awesomeness of God. When you are standing on a cliff, hundreds of feet above the sea, a sea that's roaring and raging, and you can just see forever. You can't help but think. You can't help but think about deep and important stuff. And Psalm 27, verse 4, is the verse that comes to mind here. I'd like to talk about that verse a little bit today. This is what Psalm 27, verses 4 through 5 says. "One thing I ask from the Lord, this only do I seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to gaze on the beauty of the Lord and to seek Him in His temple. For in the day of trouble He will keep me safe in His dwelling. He will hide me in the shelter of His sacred tent and set me high upon a rock." Psalm 27 was written by King David. And David wanted to dwell in the house of the Lord, in the temple of the Lord, or in the sanctuary, all the days of his life. And he wanted to behold the beauty of God. And we know that God is not confined. He's not confined to living in a house of worship. He's not confined to living in a temple or a sanctuary. And the beauty of God goes way beyond a physical building. The beauty of God is all around us, if we take the time to look. And sometimes I guess it takes a trip halfway around the world to get us to notice it, but it's there. is there if our eyes are open. So I like to summarize this verse from Psalm 27 by saying, one thing I seek is to live in the presence of the Lord all the days of my life and behold God's beauty. One thing I seek is to live in the presence of the Lord all the days of my life and behold God's beauty. That's the one thing I need. That's the one thing you need. That's the one thing that this world needs, is to have the beauty of the Lord living inside of us. And that is the one thing that I need, that's the one thing that you need, that's the one thing that we all need, that's the one thing this world needs, to live in the presence of God all the days of our lives, and to see God's beauty, and to hear God's beauty, and to smell God's beauty, and to taste God's beauty, and to touch God's beauty. The beauty of the Lord is all around us. John chapter 1 verse 3 says, through him all things were made. Through him all things were made. And today we get so caught up. We get so caught up in virtual reality that we don't have time to stop and smell the roses. We live in a world where there is so much glitter and glamour and neon lights, and it's so bright that we can't even see the stars. In fact, when we were there, we saw a place on our trip that was called a designated dark sky reserve. And I looked on the internet, there's like 100 of those places in the world. And it's a place where it's dark enough and far enough away from all the bright lights to see the sky in all its glory. I think that's an interesting fact, but think about that. We have to have a registered place so you can truly experience the night sky. So you can truly experience the night sky in all of God's glory. We live in a world where violence and brutality rule so many hearts rather than the beauty of God. And in this kind of world, I need, and you need, and we all need the beauty of the Lord living inside of our souls. That's just what we need. Jesus said that man cannot live by bread alone. And just as we need food to nourish our physical bodies, we also need beauty to nourish our inner souls. And as much as you need food in your body, you need beauty for your soul. God gives us what is beautiful. He gives us what is beautiful to enliven our souls, to fill our souls, to energize our souls. And each one of us has different experiences of God's beauty and different appreciations of His beauty. And we really don't have to travel very far to see it. That's what I came to realize. Every time I come to church on 40, there's this red barn right after the jail. There's this red barn with white trim looking over the hill. And I always say, that is the prettiest spot in the world. You guys know what I'm talking about, that barn with the hill, the trees? Yeah, I mean, it's beautiful. Tonight we're going to take a hayride. We're going to take a hayride through some of the most picturesque hills and valleys around. And there are people all over the world that buy calendars with covered bridges in them. And those are the same covered bridges that some of you guys drive through every day. We find beauty. We find beauty in those indescribable and indefinable moments that deeply touch our hearts, that deeply touch our minds, that deeply touch our senses. Those moments that touch our hearts when we can feel the presence of God. We feel the presence of God in what is beautiful. And each one of us could tell different stories of when we heard beauty, or when we saw beauty, or when we smelled beauty, or tasted beauty, or touched beauty. when beauty has touched our inner souls, when God has touched us. Grace read from Job this morning. She said, "In his hand is the life of every creature and the breath of all mankind." In a world where everything is so busy, so hectic, so divisive, and so filled with anger and bitterness, people just don't have time to sit back, to pause, and reflect and appreciate the beauty of God. And that's when we need this verse. "One thing I seek, to live in the presence of the Lord all the days of my life, and behold God's beauty." We behold God's beauty through our eyes. Where do you see God most clearly? What is your story? Is it sunsets or sunrises, or flowers, or in your garden? Where is it that touches your heart? When you are overwhelmed, when you are silenced by the beauty before you, you're speechless, you're breathless. During our vacation, I saw the beauty of God's presence. But like I mentioned before, it is not because there isn't beauty around me. Rather, you tend to get used to it, or you tend to get desensitized. I want to undesensitize us. That's the word. I want to undesensitize us. God wants us to be undesensitized. He wants us to find a place to pause, to worship, and thank God for His beauty. When I was standing on those cliffs, I was overwhelmed. I was silenced. That is a moment to pause and to praise our living God. We are invited to live every day in the presence of our living God and to behold the beauty of God that we see with our eyes. Many people see the presence of God in art or poetry or music. All of us are different. Each one of us has different visual experiences and different auditory experiences which are filled with beauty and the presence of our God. We can even experience the beauty of God through our other senses as well. Taste and smell and touch. Each one of us gives us glimpses into the face of God. God uses all of our senses. And when we live in the presence of God, we see beauty. When we see beauty, we see God. And I don't mean to limit the beauty of God to just nature either. I just happen to be where it struck me. I pray that I can be more open to it in other parts of my life as well. I want to be the kind of person that sees the glory of God in everything. I want to experience the presence of God standing atop majestic cliffs in Ireland, or experience the presence of God riding on a hayride through the hills of Putnam County, or in my garden looking at flowers, or listening to my sons reading my daughter a bedtime story, or watching two friends shake hands in church. Those are all ways to experience the love of God. When you see and experience the love of God, you are experiencing love. When you experience love, you see the face of God. Now, I don't want you guys to think that I'm a super cultured kind of guy, but there is a great example in the musical. And I was going to have Megan up here to tell me how to pronounce it, because I always just say Les Mis. What's the full? Les Mis. It's French, so you got to say it. See, that's how cultured I am. Speak your mind. But in Les Mis, there's a main character, Jean Valjean. It's also French. And when he sings at the very end, he sings, to love another person is to see the face of God. And I think that's an absolutely beautiful quote. To love another person is to see the face of God. These are all ways that we see the glory of God. And He's responsible for all of them. Psalm 104 reads, "How many are your works, Lord? In wisdom you made them all." See, God in His grace leaves us traces and leaves us glimpses of the eternal magnificence that we will one day see in heaven. And it's up to us. It's up to us to feel it. And it's up to us to share it. Again, in Romans chapter 1, verse 1, it says, "For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, His eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that the people are without excuse." Ugliness pervades our culture. We see hatred. We see destruction. We see how sadness affects our society day after day after day. Sometimes all we can think is negative. What does it take? What does it take for us to see the positive? To see the beauty? To see the love? God's beauty is so magnificent and so pervasive that sometimes we miss it. Often we tend to focus so much on the negative aspects of the world that we fail to see the beauty that is all around us. Sometimes it's good to sit back and think about how wonderfully good God truly is. The truth is, yes, there are many things in the world that are bad. However, let us not forget the good things that God has placed before us. Let us remember the Lord still reigns. He still reigns with the ultimate authority, the ultimate peace, the ultimate grace. Let us not forget the beauty of God. He is beautiful. His work is beautiful. Remembering the goodness of the Lord cuts through all the negativity around us. One thing I seek, to live in the presence of the Lord all the days of my life, to behold His beauty. This is what I need. This is what the world needs. To have the beauty of the Lord living inside us. Amen.
Yeah.
Now let's all